there, everybody. We are going to work on photosynthesis today. So we're going to start with just a picture overview of a leaf and some of the basics that you already know, hopefully from junior high, elementary school, right? We're going to go into the whole process of photosynthesis using sunlight and carbon dioxide and a little bit of water to then make oxygen and sugar. So we are taking a look at an overview of photosynthesis. If it is in blue for this video, those are the things that you need to write. I will also tell you to pause and go find a picture to insert. So this would be a place where you're going to want to pause and find a picture once I'm done explaining, okay? So overview of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process by which autotrophic organisms use light to make sugar, also called glucose, and oxygen gas from carbon dioxide and water. So autotrophic organisms are those organisms that can make their own food from sunlight, and photosynthesis is the process that they use to make sugar and oxygen from carbon dioxide and water using light energy. Right now would be a really great time to pause and go find the equation for photosynthesis. So you can type into, when you go to insert, type in equation for photosynthesis. Maybe you can find one that has a leaf like this, and it gives you that equation. You start out with carbon dioxide and water, and you need light from the sun. You take those three things, and out of it you get sugar and oxygen. No need to write any of this down. We've already done a bunch of stuff on energy transformation, but just a reminder that energy can be transformed from one form to another. Free energy is available for work, so energy that is able to be used for work, and heat is a byproduct of reactions that you can't use for work. You do need what it says at the top. The sun is the main source of energy for life on Earth. This is just some examples, some pretty things of the sun. But sun is the main source of energy for life on Earth. And we'll see what that actually means here in a minute. So the basics of photosynthesis. Almost all plants are photosynthetic autotrophs. So you need to know that term, photosynthetic autotrophs, which means that contains plants, bacteria, and some protists, right? They can make their own food. So autotrophs generate their own organic matter, meaning sugar, through photosynthesis. So that's what a photosynthetic autotroph is. An autotroph is something that can generate its own organic matter, its own food, by photosynthesis. And in that process, sunlight energy is transformed to energy stored in the form of chemical bonds. So that energy from the sun is basically changed into a form like glucose that the energy is stored in the form of chemical bonds. All right, so this is just an overview picture. You might want to pause right now and maybe go find a picture of a leaf for photosynthesis. Might be a good idea. And it just shows you again, the things that come in for photosynthesis are your carbon dioxide, your sunlight, and your water. And what you get out is your sugar, your oxygen, and some water through transpiration. We'll talk more about that later. And again, it gives you that equation for photosynthesis. No need to write anything down for the food chain. We're just taking a look at the fact that at the base of the food chain and the base of all things for when it comes to needing energy is photosynthetic autotrophs. Grass, leaves, anything that is green that makes its own food is the foundation of the food chain. And then everything after that, right, is going to consume something that first consumed an photosynthetic autotroph. And this kind of gives you a little bit better of a picture on the food web, the foundation of the food web being those plants at the bottom. And then you can see those herbivores down at the bottom that eat those plants, and then the prey animals that eat those herbivores. And us being at the top of the food chain, we really need these plants to be working well. All right, this section is very important. So if you are really focused, this is a great time to become even more focused. This is where a lot of students tend to get a little bit confused when it comes to concepts. So why are plants green, or why do we see any color at all? We are going to talk about that here, okay? So this section, why are plants green, right? You would like to probably pause right now and go insert a picture of the electromagnetic spectrum, okay? Electromagnetic spectrum. And it's going to give you, it may not look exactly like this, but it may look somewhat like this. The electromagnetic spectrum is a spectrum of waves, basically. Starting down here with gamma rays, very small wavelengths, okay, very powerful radiation, okay, very small wavelengths, all the way over to the right, where you have radio waves, which have very large wavelengths, okay, that you can't see, right? So everything in gamma rays, if you've ever had an X-ray, you can't see those. UV, we don't see. Infrared and microwaves, when you turn on your microwave, you can't see those microwaves. And radio waves, we can't see either. So all of these outlying things on the left and the right of the middle are waves that we know exist, but we cannot see. What we can see, however, is what is in the middle, visible light. So visible light goes from about somewhere a little bit under or right at 400 nanometers between wavelengths up to about 700 or 750. So wavelength is the distance between peaks of the waves. Okay, so if you look at this visible light down here at the bottom, a wavelength would be the distance between this peak and this peak, or in the red light between this peak and this peak. Okay, so you can see in purple light the wavelengths are shorter. The distance between the top of one wave and the top of another is small compared to the distance between the top of one wave and the top of another in red light. Okay, sunlight is a form of energy which is measured in wavelengths. And you need the third bullet that says the sun radiates the full spectrum. So that full spectrum that you saw, gamma rays to radio waves on the previous slide, it radiates that full spectrum, but the atmosphere takes most of that out for us, which is really good because if you're bombarded with gamma radiation, it's not going to turn you into the Hulk. It's just going to crisp you. Okay, so we don't want that, right? But it does allow visible light through about that 380 nanometers to 750 nanometers. And that allows us to see. Allows us to see color, which is a good thing. We need that or we'd be walking around without being able to see anything. Again, this is a picture of that spectrum, right? That wave spectrum, and you need this concept here. Different wavelengths of visible light are seen by the human eye as different colors. Visible light is how we see color. So there's a question on your exam that says what range of waves on the electromagnetic spectrum do we see? And it's that 380 to 750-ish, okay? That's how we see color, right? So we see the wavelengths of 380 nanometers as purple, we see 500 as green, and like 700, 750 as red. That's how our eye can transform those things. All right, you want to know about pigments. Pigments are substances that absorb visible light. So anything that you see as a color is because of a pigment. So pigments absorb visible light, and they absorb different ones, absorb light of different wavelengths. However, the color that we see is the color that is most reflected by the pigment. So I'm right now wearing a gray sweater. My gray sweater is not absorbing that gray light, or I don't know what color technically gray would be, but it's not absorbing that color, it is reflecting gray. So it's absorbing all of the other colors, but reflecting gray. The color you see is the reflected color. So we're gonna do an example now of this red bird. So the absorbed colors are not seen. The reflected colors are seen. So these are the two questions that you wanna be thinking about right now. Which colors or colors on the rainbow of arrows is absorbed by the red bird? Think about it for a second. And which colors are reflected by the red bird based on what you see at the bottom? The absorbed colors are not seen and the reflected colors are seen. So what colors are absorbed and what colors are reflected? If you said that the absorbed colors are orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, you would be correct. The bird is absorbing all of the colors. The pigments in the bird's feathers are absorbing orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, but reflecting red, because red is the color we see because we see the colors that are reflected. So the light, that color that is reflected, is the color that we see. So this is why plants are green. Okay, plants that are green are reflecting that green light arrow. They're absorbing red, orange, yellow, blue, and purple, but they are mostly reflecting green, and that is what you see. So again, color that you see is the reflected light color. All the other colors are being absorbed. This is important. So why are plants green? You need to write this statement down. They are green because they do not absorb green light. they reflect it. And you can see chlorophyll is the pigment in plants, right, that is used for photosynthesis. And you can see on this spectrum, they're absorbing this purple and some of the blues, and then once you get down here in the green area, it's reflecting, and then it picks back up and is absorbing that orange and red. All right, so predict this. What range of wavelengths of light does this filament of algae reflect? What is this filament of algae reflecting? And it wants you to give me a range of numbers from the bottom. Okay, so this filament of algae is green. So what range on these numbers of light does that reflect? It's reflecting, if you said somewhere between 500 and maybe 570, or if you said between 5 and 600, that would be correct. It is reflecting the wavelengths from 500 nanometers to about 580 nanometers, or if you put 600, okay, this green area, because it's showing green. All right, there are other pigments that absorb a lot of the spectrum in plants. So they have not just chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, but they do have other carotenoids, the yellows, the reds, the oranges, in them as well. So, and that's what you see later in the fall, or right now, basically, when all of the chlorophyll is dissipated in the leaf. You see those reds, yellows, oranges, browns, those colors reflected when the fall comes and leaves are going to fall off of the trees. Okay, so you have chlorophyll A. It's the only pigment that can participate directly in photosynthesis, so those are the pigments. And then you have a bunch of other pigments in plants as well, right? But chlorophyll A is the only pigment that can directly participate in photosynthesis. And then you have the accessory pigments, things that the plant uses for light absorption and then transferring that light to chlorophyll A. Again, that's why I said we see those fall colors, right? When the chlorophyll, the primary pigment, dissipates in the fall, then you get to see those pretty colors of the other reflected pigments. All right, parts of the chloroplast. There are 3 parts. You've got the thylakoids. Okay, it's a flattened sac. The pigments of photosynthesis are in their membrane. So one pancake, this is what kids typically think they look like. So if you're looking at this stack of pancakes here, one pancake is a thylakoid, so one disc is a thylakoid. A stack of thylakoids that looks like a stack of pancakes is called a grana, or granum, which is, they say stacks of coins, but to me they look like pancakes. So that's what the stacks are called, are grana. And then the stroma is the inner part of the chloroplast. That's the spaces between the stacks of thylakoids. This just gives you a picture. Again, you get a good picture of a chloroplast. Now would be a good time to pause and insert a picture of a chloroplast. Something like this one would be great. That has the clear membranes, the stacks of thylakoids, and then the stroma being the inside of the chloroplast. All right, overview of photosynthesis. This is what happens. You have your chloroplast. You have 2 parts to photosynthesis, the light reactions and the Calvin cycle, which is also called the dark reactions. Okay, your reactants are up top. What is coming in for photosynthesis? On the light reactions, you get water and light go through the thylakoids, okay, the stacks of thylakoids, and the product that you get out of that is the oxygen. That's where the oxygen comes from. Light and water goes into the thylakoids, water gets split, and you get that oxygen. On the Calvin cycle side, right, that's where the plant takes in the CO2, changes it using ATP and NADPH from the light reactions, and changes that then into sugar. Okay, so the reactants at the top, water and carbon dioxide, that's what you start with. Light drives the reaction on this side. Out of it, the products and what gives off, okay, what the plant is making is oxygen and sugar. Okay, again, light reactions take solar, light energy, and water, and they give you the product oxygen, and then it gives ATP and NADPH to the Calvin cycle, which takes the carbon dioxide and changes it into sugar. So a review of photosynthesis, the reactants, the things you need to start with are carbon dioxide and water, and then you need sunlight to drive the reaction. So those are the 3 things you need to start photosynthesis: CO2, water, sunlight. What you get out of photosynthesis is sugar and oxygen. The sunlight is captured by the pigments in chlorophyll, right, inside the chloroplasts, and those pigments are in the chloroplasts. Okay, and we've already talked about these here. Chloroplasts absorb light and energy and convert it into chemical energy. Okay, you should already have something like this written down, so you may not need to write that down. What is a pigment? We're actually going to skip this part. We don't need that. Chloroplasts, we talked about that already. Basically, what I want you to have is a picture of something like this. So go ahead and pause and insert a picture of, you can put like chloroplast overview of photosynthesis, and try to find something that looks like this, that gives you the figure where you get the reactants. You need water and carbon dioxide, and light energy goes through the process of photosynthesis inside the chloroplast, and out of it you get oxygen and sugar. Again, the light reaction side, you're using water and sunlight going through the light reactions in the thylakoids, and out of it you get oxygen. And then it gives ATP and NADPH2, the Calvin cycle side, or the dark reaction side. And then you have CO2 that is used to make the sugar. Okay, and then this is just one more picture and that review that says photosynthesis uses light energy to make food molecules. All right, that is the end of your photosynthesis notes. I would just highly recommend you go back, review that section on color, and make sure that you know the different parts of the chloroplast as far as the light reactions and the dark reactions, and know what the reactants and the products of photosynthesis are. See you guys next time.